Welcome back. I hope everyone enjoyed their morning tea break. If I could just ask everyone to turn off their mobile phones. I'm sure you've all had a few phone calls in the break, so just with respect to the speakers, if you could turn your phones off, that would be great. I've got another interesting session planned for you this morning, 3 more papers, and then we'll also have an update from Keith Middleton on the electrical subcommittee. Just another reminder that lunch will be served in the ballroom, which is next door, so you go through the doors and turn right. There are a heap of seating, but if you're going to have a look at your name tag, if you've got a table number on it, can you sit at those tables? Because we just allocated some of our veterans and keynote speakers and chairs and others to sit together in groups. If you can do that, that'd be great. Okay, it's now my pleasure to introduce our chair for the second session, and that's Steve Butcher. So Steve represents Johnn, Holland Rail and Transport, again one of our platinum corporate members of the PWI. Steve's over 41 years of experience in the rail industry and is regarded as one of the more experienced global experts in rail, having worked in the UK, Middle East, India, the USA, Australia and the Asia Pacific regions. Steve's role as Executive General Manager of Rail and Transport for Johnn Holland is responsible for planning, leading and executing the full end-to-end of rail and road transport projects, from rail engineering, design, construction, both operations and then maintenance for the business. Steve is also responsible for the strategic direction, growth and bidding activities along with the day-to-day operations for the group. He holds the full P&L accountability for rail and transport divisions and the associated consortiums and joint ventures that Hollands are involved in. Prior to joining Johnn Holland, Steve is the Managing Director of global transport company Serco, where he was responsible for the operation and strategic aspects of the global transport business. Steve's a highly experienced board director and has significant value and oversight roles on major rail contracts, extensions and enhancement programs, both in heavy and light rail and metros. Steve's experience in both frontline operations as well as representing the corporate interests has proven track record in motivating high-performing teams, engaging a culture and a discipline of achieving targeted outcomes. So would you please join with me in welcoming Steve to chair our second session.
Hi, good morning everyone. I was just joking because I don't know who wrote that, but there's not much time left for me to speak after that. You know, guys, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm going to whip through a very quick corporate introduction about what Johnn Holland is and what Johnn Holland Rail and Transport is, but you don't want to hear about that. What we want to hear about is the difference in this industry and the challenges that we've got over the next few years, and really to try and take away looking at things through the corporate lens and look at it as a wider industry. I think through all that introduction, I've been very fortunate in my career to work in lots of different places, starting in British Rail a few years ago as a 16-year-old. I don't come from a typical construction industry. I come from a rail operations background. I was a train driver for a number of years, traction inspector, and spent a number of years in the accident investigation for Her Majesty's Railway Inspector and a number of other areas going through, all the way through operations. And then I diversified into infrastructure and infrastructure services. So why is this really important to Johnn Holland, but more important to me as an individual before I get into the spiel? I'll tell you why is because when I started and we talked about developing the industry, developing people's careers. When I left school with very little qualifications, and the railway over 41 years has pretty much given me everything I have, and my family everything I have. But along the way, there has been some issues, as we all know, industry reforms, privatisation in the UK, and a whole number of things. But we are hitting the best time ever. I can look around the room from the very young to probably some of the more seasoned railway professionals around the world. I'm not going to look at you because you'll know who you are. But I guess in many ways, we're entering into the best period that has ever been that I can remember in 40 years. Railways are being built quicker than we can actually build them. There's line upgrades for faster trains, faster rolling stock, but we're in the most challenging of times. And, you know, I just thought we've got a lot of colleagues around the room that is dealing with escalation. I was on a project review the other day, and certainly listening to Chris, we've got a number of challenges with workers being away from home during challenging times, which I take very seriously. The other area I take very seriously as well is the culture of our industry. And before I go into this, I'm going to give you a bit of a story that made my stomach churn, and I'm hoping it makes you churn. And all those that have probably got over 20 years, I want you to look in the mirror. And I want you to look in the mirror and look at what shadow are you casting. So in the Pilbara, and also in a number of other projects that we have around, we've got some young engineers like Kyle, some really talented people. I can see many talented people in this room. But you know, the culture is what we leave. And the engineers went out on a remote job. They was with a team of experienced railway professionals. And quite frankly, the behaviour that we're leaving a legacy for was not one that I want to be associated with. It was one of experienced railway professionals thinking they know it all. Experienced railway professionals thinking that culture is acceptable, whether it be a young man or a young woman, to just go back and say, this is not a job for kids, it's a job for experienced people. Well, how do you think that made those young engineers feel? And when they come back, the reason I'm so emotional about it is they both handed their notice in. And I thought, shit, what are we doing here? This is an industry and a legacy we want to leave. So this is not just an industry problem for people coming into the industry. It's an industry problem for all of us. And I can see some people a bit more seasoned than even me. What I would say is that this is an industry that we've really got to be inviting, we've got to be accepting, and we've got to make sure that people learn from our mistakes, because we've made many along the way. And I just want us to think, before I move on, I want us to think about when we're out doing the job, whatever you do in this industry, I don't care, because I'm not an hierarchical individual, but whatever we do, what is the shadow that we're leaving for the generations to come? And I want us to think about that as a set of railway professionals. Why is the PWI important to me? Just the same as the ARA, because I feel that we look at the industry too much through the lens of our corporates. Yes, we've all got lords and masters to deal with. I've got a budget, I've got a set of figures, I know the ilks of producing KPIs and targets. Jesus, I've spent all my career doing it. But what I would ask us all to do, and the reason organisations like the PWI, the ARA, Institute of Railway Operators, all those, is because we have to look at the future through the eyes of the industry, not necessarily the corporates we work in. Because the challenges of talent, the challenges of diversity, the challenges of getting the next generation of what's sat in this room lies with each and every one of us. And that's important. And I was really proud, even though Chris, is he still in the room, Chris? We had challenges in the Pilbara. We also have challenges. You know, this year alone, I have had 3 members of my team not here today because of the mental health challenge and the work-related issues. 3 members of my team, and that's really, that plays a lot on my mind. And I think as an organisation of the PWI, the ARA, any industry organisation, TrackSafe, we have to tackle these issues as a collective to get through what we've got to get through over the next few years, because the pipeline is stronger than we've ever seen it. The pipeline is the best place to be. I may have worked in all these places, but some of the best railway professionals I've ever worked with are either in this room, Mr. Fleck being one of them, in this room or around Australia. And I can assure you, it's not always around the world that gets the best answers. A lot of the best answers for this industry are in this room. Now, just to make sure that I don't upset John Holland too much, because I quite often can do that, you don't need to know who I am. Historic projects, we've been around clearly a long time. Many of you have either worked for us, with us, or as partners, or as clients. What makes me proud of working for John Holland is that what we get involved in is we transforming people's lives. And when we went live on Sydney Metro with our partners MTR and UGL, I saw families get on that train and it make a difference to the way they live and the areas that they live in. So it is about transforming lives. It started in 1949. Some of you may have remembered it. As we go through an old variant number of projects, I'm not going to go into those projects in depth, but they are groundbreaking and historic projects. Sydney Metro, Canberra Metro, the Pilbara, Royal's been mentioned already. It's the nationwide, even in New Zealand, in terms of the work that we do there, as others do in terms of working with partners. Why I joined John Holland is because when I arrived 5 years ago as a railway professional all my life, or a railway person, where do you ever get the chance to be involved from drawing a piece of paper on a railway to putting Mr. and Mrs. Smith and the three kids, or allowing people? So we deal with design and construction, delivery of rail services, track signals, etc., systems engineering, power, electrification, through to operations and maintenance. As we've said, we're across the nation. I've run out of time, so I'll be very quick. Our operations and maintenance team, we're running some big operations with partners, Melbourne Trains, Canberra. Our plant fleet has got a large number of assets. We're just doing some reinvestment in there. I've just signed off you don't even want to know, telephone number program for an upgrade in plant. Sydney Metro, Adelaide, and we've just taken over for our SINS Region 9, which is going great, actually, and providing a full end-to-end service with Sydney buses. So that's me. That is John Holland. I'd go back to what we originally said, though. During the panel discussions and the questions, I'd like us to think not through the corporate lens, but about what difference we're making to the industry and what that future legacy where you want to leave behind. So thank you for listening.